On today's Biz Talk, we're going to jump into some very interesting stories that hopefully will provide you with some inspiration to deal with your adversity, because we know being in the nail business, you don't got no choice. You're going to deal with some adversity, and hopefully this will help right now on the Biz Talk. So today we've got my brother, Greg Salo, president of Young Nails, on the Biz Talk, and we're going to talk about some stories. And let me tell you something, he's got stories of when the business first started. These stories, I mean, we've got how many, bro? Got hundreds, right?
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's super, super intense. And the whole purpose here is for you to understand that we've been through it all, and we continue to go through it. But we want to share a lot of stories of how we built the business with you in the nail industry, and hopefully this will help get you through some of your difficult times, which you may be going through right now. So I want to start off with, like, when you got in the business with Mom, sort of your first major encounter, which was yours and Mom's partner back then, and what that was like. First of all, what that was like, how you got into business with them, and then we'll talk about the gnarly stuff. Cool. But how did that happen, first of all?
So it's funny. It's crazy how fast 27 years goes by. But I was 20 years old at the time, and I was going to school. I was going to Rancho here in Orange to study to be a fireman. And I got a call from my mom, and she said, "Hey, I've got this great business opportunity." My mom's always had this crazy entrepreneurial spirit, and she's literally tried everything. At the time, she owned a business called Postal Express. It's like a mailbox, etc., type of UPS store.
Right.
And she said, this guy walked into my business, and he's got this really cool product that I want you to see. So I said, okay, when I get off school, I'll come down and check it out. She's like, yeah, please, because I think this is a great opportunity. So when I got off school, went down.
Yep.
I think, were you working there at the time?
No, I was working there. Yeah, summertime at the Postal Express, correct.
So it was just the end of summer, so you probably just went back to school at the time.
I think I went back to college, yeah.
And it was because I had just started school, and I remember walking into her business and meeting this like really well-dressed man who had this crazy briefcase kit, and he was going to start manufacturing custom manicuring kits for cosmetology schools. And I was blown away. I was 20 years old, and I saw this really cool plastic attache case with like a foam dye insert with all these like jars that he was kind of assembling to make it look custom. And He said, "I'm going to be making this new kit, and I'm going to call my company Hollywood Nails International."
Love it.
Hollywood Nails International. And I'm going to sell these kits, and we're going to get rich really fast. And I was like, wow. I mean, at the time I was thinking like, what the heck is this? Like, are you serious? Like nails, like nail kits?
Right.
So he said, look, I've got an appointment in LA tomorrow. Why don't you join me? And, he's like, because he had a list, it was Association of Accredited Cosmetology Schools. There was a list of cosmetology schools nationwide, and one of the schools was in LA. He called him up, set up the appointment. We went down the next day. So we met with this gentleman, Mr. Kenny Williams, still awesome guy, owns Universal College of Beauty in South LA. Met with him, and he was blown away. He was like, I love it. He's like, when they're ready, I'll take 10. And I was like,
What?
Yeah, seriously, I was like, no way. And these kits were awesome. I mean, so, we get back and, he kept saying, I told you, these kits, they're awesome. They're going to be amazing. So I told my mom, I'm like, I'm in, all in. Right. So I literally, within the next 2 weeks, I quit school. I was working as a banquet waiter at the Comfort Inn. It was actually the Quality Hotel in Anaheim next to the convention center.
Yep.
I quit my job, I put my 2 weeks in, and I joined my mom and started Hollywood Nails International and started producing custom manicuring kits for cosmetology schools.
So, okay, let me ask you this, bro.
Yep.
And some of these things I've actually never asked Greg, and I'm kind of curious. Because I wasn't in the business at this time, did you have a feeling at some point when you and mom are working with this gentleman, was there ever a time where you're like, something don't feel right? Like this partnership, something doesn't feel right. Like, was there did you feel anything, or were you just kind of like, you know what, this is the way it is business. I'm going to, everything's fine. Let's just keep moving ahead.
In the beginning, it was really high energy and,
a lot of rah. And
yeah. And I mean, he had a lot of business experience.
Right.
I mean, he constantly told me that he had, he was a master of procurement, right? I mean, purchasing,
bro.
Right.
Yep.
So,
yep.
He was basically selling thousands of fax machines.
That's crazy.
Faxes, right? So, he was buying them. I don't remember the story exact, but he bragged about how much business experience he had. So,
cool.
I mean, somebody who knew nothing about business.
And you're 20, right? 20 or 21?
Yeah. I mean, I was young, naive, gullible. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know anything. All I knew was how to basically, I don't know, it was like get by day by day. It was like all you guys out there who are in your 20s who are trying to figure it out. That's what I was trying to do back then. I was just trying to figure it out. And I stumbled across an opportunity to work with my mom because we thought this was a great opportunity.
Okay, so
when did I feel?
Well, so it sounds like for you it was like, okay, this guy can be a mentor. He knows what he's doing. He has experience.
Correct.
I'm gonna go with the flow and learn. And I'm sure there was something to learn from him, and you did. But was there like a year in, let's say, was there ever a time where you're just kind of like just a feeling of like something's not right?
Yeah, because, there was times where, I would be putting kits together and he would say to send the kit out to some random school, in Louisiana.
And they weren't, to your knowledge, this wasn't like an account that you guys had?
Yeah, it was basically sending a sample out to somebody.
Okay.
Where they're going to review the kit and basically, he was convinced, they had so many students per month and they're going to be able to do this much. And I'd pack the kit and I'd send it out. And then, like 3 weeks later, like, did you hear from them? And, he'd call me into his office and we would call the person and get him on the phone. And, it was almost like he was building a personal relationship with that person. But then it would die. I mean, little did we know at that time it was happening, but, he was actually having them after time. He would say, look, don't worry about it. Just send me a check. And it wasn't to us. It was to himself.
So he was telling these accounts.
Yeah.
You guys were sending out inventory.
Correct.
And instead of paying the company, they were paying him.
They were paying him.
So, and he was
embezzling money.
And basically embezzling money. Okay.
Yes. So, this took place, and it was. I didn't know that this was happening, but it was also. We were in a situation where he would show up and he would get he would be yelling like at the top of his lungs because his partner at the time, which was his girlfriend, was working with us, and he would be yelling at her, and I was just like thinking like is this normal?
Right.
Like is that how people work? Because I'd never been in a work environment before. I always worked for someone, and then we get into our own business, and having someone shout at the top of their lungs, and he would set a meeting and like slamming doors. And I mean, it was just a real volatile environment that I had never been exposed to. And that's when I started thinking like, this can't,
Something's
off,
Yeah.
you know?
When did you actually find out, or how did you find out the guy was embezzling money?
We you know, we had an idea. We weren't 100% sure, but what ended up happening was about a year and a half into the business. You have to remember, Dad had no idea. My father had no idea that we had gone into business with this guy. And when he found out, he flipped out.
Yeah,
like,
I remember that.
So my mom, again, we were bleeding bad. Like, we were borrowing money from credit cards. We were borrowing money from my mom's line of credit. We were borrowing money from credit cards. We're just going farther and farther in debt, because he, at the time, was basically issuing a check to himself.
Right.
For, I remember it was $350 a week to him. It was $350 a week to his girlfriend.
That was their salary.
That was their salary. We weren't making any money.
You and Mom weren't.
At all. But
Yeah.
he had to pay himself that amount per week, on top of his girlfriend getting $350 a week. And I mean, you have to remember, we had no revenue coming in.
Right.
And I remember in him saying that, you know, to cut me a check. And I remember sitting with Mom, and she was like, I can't afford to cut you a check when there's no money coming in.
There's no money.
We were borrowing money.
And part of the reason why no money was coming in was because he was collecting it too, right?
He was collecting it too, and we weren't selling anything. I mean, we'd picked up a few accounts, but again, I mean, we were selling probably a couple $1,000s a month, and we had just taken on a new lease in Anaheim, it was like 1,700 square feet off of Kramer Place.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. So on top of, you know, the new lease for the new location and inventory, we had no idea what we were doing when it came. The cases that we needed, right, to buy these.
Right.
There was, I remember there was like a 500 piece minimum to get these cases in. And these cases were $20 a piece.
Right.
So right off the bat, right, like you're talking 500 times 20 is 10 grand. So where's this 10,000? Mom had to borrow $10,000 to bring in a warehouse full of empty cases, and we didn't have foam, and we didn't have jars, and we didn't have we basically had like nothing. So then when we started accumulating all this inventory, we also started accumulating a lot of debt.
Right, of course. And but like something had to happen where it was like, we have to get rid of this guy. He's taking money. Like, did Mom find out, or did she see something in the checkbook, checks being cashed? Like, what? Like, was there something that occurred?
So basically, I remember it was about a year and a half in. She came into when I was living with her. She came into my room and she said, "Yeah, I've got. Can I just be frank with you?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Look, what do you think about just you and me just doing this ourselves?" And I remember at the time thinking, like, "What are you talking about? Like, we don't know anything about this business. Like, we need him." And I could see her getting a little deflated. She was like, I remember just seeing her face thinking like she looks like she is going to quit. Mm-hmm. And it was that moment where I said, "Look, if you want to do this, I'll stand behind you 100%.
So she didn't tell you at that time, like, hey,
how far in debt we actually were.
And that the guy was
she
knew.
She knew. I didn't know,
right,
because she saw how much money was basically going out,
right,
and it was nothing she had ever seen. So, and I think that was the first red flag, really, her coming to me saying, "It's not right. We're not making anything. We're losing. We're like,
you're getting killed.
We're getting like, no, we're gonna have to file bankruptcy."
Right.
So
it was a year and a half in.
Yeah. So I remember I basically told him, like, you know, we need to come to an amicable, basically, resolution,
separation,
and separate.
Right.
And he flipped out and he was like, "I want 50 grand, and, you know, I want this and I want that." And I basically told him, I said, "Look, this is what we can offer. Like,
X amount of dollars.
We have this amount of dollars, and either you take it or we file bankruptcy, and you get nothing.
Right.
And so he ended up agreeing to it, and he went his way. We went our way, and he actually went his way and started making the same kits that we were making.
Right. Like
So,
immediately competing with you.
Immediately competing against us
Right.
with a competitor that we were buying product from.
Right.
It was crazy.
So this is like, talk about jumping into something, right, where you truly don't really know what you're getting into when you get into business. And as in the nail business, as a nail technician or hairstylist or whatever, you're basically starting your own business, and you have to expect the unexpected. And in our case, when Greg and my mom started, talk about getting an uppercut.
I mean, it was
off the bat, bro.
I was getting kicked in the balls. Literally.
That's another way to put it.
Oh,
Yeah, and you're a year and a half in, especially when you think like we're gonna make all this money, and you just get punched in the gut, man, and you're down for the count. And majority of people right there would call it a day and say, this is not for me. Mom and you decided we're gonna go our own direction. We can do this, and it just takes a lot of resilience. You've got to be able to handle very difficult times if you're going to become an entrepreneur, if you're going to become self-employed, right? Like, you got to take a lot.
Thankfully, my mom's her attitude of not quitting, not giving up. It was a huge inspiration for me. You have to remember too, in my early 20s, on top of, having these, aspirations to be my own boss, I knew nothing about being my own boss. It was just cool saying I'm my own boss. Right. I own my own business. But, having her as, that inspiration, having her, say, look, I think we can do it ourselves. I think it gave me a lot of motivation to step up to the plate and want to do the things without having to say, you need to do this. I just did it because I didn't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
I didn't have a choice.
That's always the magic phrase, right? In doing something, it's always my mentality, bro. I think it's all of our mentality here. It's like, we don't have a choice. Correct. We've got to do this. Yes. There's no other option.
There's no other option.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. Talking about mom, it's crazy. I remember I would come back from college, bro, and I would ask mom, how are things going? And she's like, oh, it's difficult, it's challenging. A little bit more than that. She didn't really tell me, but what you said, she always has this, it's like a blind faith belief of like, it's gonna work out, and I know it's gonna work out, and like I'm never gonna quit. And she would just say those simple phrases, bro. It's pretty remarkable, like, to keep that level of positivity when you are up shit creek.
She embraced the suck better than anyone I ever know, and I'm like, that whole saying of embracing the suck, it's really powerful, because most of the time when whatever you're doing, especially something new that you're not comfortable with,
right,
there's always going to be a time that you're doing it where you're just like, this is so hard. I don't think I can get through this. I don't know how I'm going to figure it out. The only thing I can say is patience and time, and being able to take those body blows. You will, and anyone can get over it if they again can embrace those hardships or those hard times. And it's not the same, and I understand it's different for everybody, but you can apply it to anything, whether it's work, sports, whatever that
Don't
is.
matter.
It's we all share that awful feeling at one point of our lives.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. Dealing with adversity is something that we're going to be addressing in upcoming episodes on the Biz Talk. Greg and I are going to go back. We're going to share these stories with you on many more upcoming episodes. And this was sort of the kind of breakout. We wanted to start sort of square one. Trust me when I say there are stories that are so insane that you almost won't believe when we get there, but we're excited to
write a book on it.
Yeah, you could. You honestly could. You honestly could. It's so crazy.
I think you're kind of going through the same thing right now with
I kind of am.
learning how to do nails.
In my nail training, bro. It's embracing the suck and dealing with adversity, and I love it. I'm all for it. So with that, we just want to say thank you for joining us this week on the Biz Talk, and we will see you next week on the Biz Talk.
Peace.